Hello there, it's Alan again. I've decided to start a new playlist on the ECL built-in functions available to you. ECL HPCC is there for manipulation of data, any which way you like, inside out, upside down. ECL HPCC can do it. So there's about 150 built-in functions which allow you to perform goodness knows what on data. So I thought I'd start with the simplest one that actually manipulates data. There are simpler functions such as sine and cosine, but you can work those out for yourself. So this one's manipulating data, this project function. And well, what does it do? It takes input data set in one format. In our case, it's just a single field of type string, and transforms that those input records one at a time into a completely different output format. Right, so this project takes its first parameter, the input data set, identifies the transform function that's going to get called record by record to transform the actual data, and the parameter here is just left, saying it's a record identifier. In more complex functions such as join, you've got left and right, but for project you've just got left. Sorry about that, something clicked in there. Anyway, right, the transform function itself, it's effectively you've got to specify an output format. That's the name of the function, and you've got to specify the input format. The inputs parameter is just a record of the type of the data set contains. In our case, I've said record of D there. And inside self, this is the same for all transforms, right? So this works for all transforms. Self talks about making a reference to the output records field. In this case, this is setting up the output field's original text, and you've got output fields length of text, and you just use L, which is the input record here. And well, let's see what this does. So while it's doing that, I'll explain. Usually when I'm running these small tests, I run them on H4 single node. You could run them on a 400 node 4, but it's not required. Just run these kind of things on a single node. Actually, HPCC will automatically detect if something's simple and convert it to a single node run if it can do. But here we are. Let's see what it's done. Nothing really that surprising. The output there is much as you'd expect. Length of text, first character, 3 records in, 3 records out. No surprises there really. So what can you do with this transform function? What options do you have? Well, first one I'll show you is the default, so that you can not specify every record, and for every field that's to be generated, you just say use the default for that type for anything I haven't explicitly specified. So I better show you the defaults, some of them anyway. Let's put that in, and let's run this. So here, oh, I didn't set up the default for integer is actually 0. The default for string is blip blip empty string, and default for real is 0.0 there. Now, having shown you this, actually I recommend you don't use that, because things can change, input structures can change, output structures can change, and this will still run, this will still work, but you may not want it. You may have made changes such that you need to revisit these transform functions, and explicitly specifying fields is a great way of making sure that the compiler will throw an error if you change things, and this is a bit rather dangerous thing to do as software moves on. But anyway, this there is an option. Another thing you can do is just default all the parameters to on a field by field comparison, name comparison, from the input record to the output record. So if this input record had a input string first character, and the output here has got first character, then it would just assign the input first character to the output first character, doing whatever casting it has to do, and all the casting is defined in the reference manual. So it won't actually work in my case because the only field I've got is text, and it doesn't tie up with any field name in the output, so this will actually generate syntax errors. And it does. There we go. So that won't work. Let's go and reset a few things. Okay, so I wasn't quite telling 100% the truth when I said it was 3 records in, 3 records out. There is the option to skip records. There's a parameter or qualifier to every transform in any context. You can say skip, and you give it a condition to any records that satisfy a particular condition or conditions. You've got all there. Will just be thrown away and not end up in the output. So let's do, what shall I do? L dot. So if the first letter of the input text is the letter D, then basically skip it. So let's see what that does. There we go, just 2 records, the D records being thrown away there. Now, we've got something else you can do. There is an optional parameter to project, it's counter. This is just a count of the current record that's being processed, so first being 1. So most people I see here use integer, but as counter can never be negative, I usually use unsigned. Let's see what it sets up. I'll just expose it so we can see what it's looks like. So length of text I've just conveniently set up to counter it being an unsigned anyway there. Let's see what this does. Again, so it skipped a record, but interestingly counter is still 3, so the counter still gets incremented even for for records that are skipped. So that's a little subtlety that took me more than 5 minutes to work out, I must admit. So that's about it, I think, for project. I'm sure there's something else which I've missed, but if I have, then I'll just have to recut another video, won't I? Anyway, all the best. Cheers.